Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Portland, Maine Board of Education Finance Operations and Personnel Committee. It is September 9th, 2024 at 6:07 p.m. and we are getting started with this committee meeting. We have a number of folks with us. So I am the chair of the committee. With us, we have committee members Opperman, Noor, and Figdor. We have board chair Lentz, and we have a number of members of our staff. We have Ryan Scallon, Katie Lamb, Ben LeSavoy, Helene DeBartolomeo, Jennifer Slabank, Sarah Warren. We have a lovely crew of folks. We're going to have a really good conversation, and it's going to span a number of topics. So we're going to be talking about rates of pay for substitute teachers. We're going to be talking about general updates in terms of the subject matter area of this committee, finance, operations, and personnel. We are going to be talking about the plan for the rest of the academic year in terms of our committee meetings and what we talk about when at a high level. And we're going to get an update on transportation. So that's what to expect in the next 90 minutes. We also, let's see, I need to Alt-tab my way across so many windows. Let's see, we also open up our committee meetings with an opportunity for public comment. So if there's anybody who is an attendee of this committee meeting that would like to make some public comment and speak for 3 minutes, raise your Zoom hand. And if that happens, then what I'll do is I'll share our procedures and rules around public comment. If I am not seeing any hands for public comment, then I am not going to spend the time reading those. But hey, we have somebody who wants to give public comment. So let me now tab over to that window, and I will explain how public comment works in this committee. Okay, so members of the public can speak on any subject directly related to the operations of our schools, except for personnel matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, because those need to be addressed through established policies and procedures. Public comment is limited to a maximum of 3 minutes or 6 minutes if somebody's using an interpreter to make their comment. Individuals cannot relinquish a portion of their allotted time to another speaker. Committee members, board members are not going to respond to comments. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disruptive conduct, including but not limited to using vulgar or obscene language, threatening others using words or by other actions, using pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, or other identity factor, making defamatory comments, exceeding the allotted time limits, talking over or interrupting others, offering repetitive comments, offering comment on matters unrelated to the school district's programs, policies, or operations. I will stop any public comment that is contrary to these rules. I see one hand raised in Zoom already, but if anybody else decides they'd like to give public comment, they can also raise their hand in Zoom. You're going to want to start with introducing yourself with your name and address. I will keep the time. When you have 30 seconds left to go, I'll let you know, and then I'll let you know when your 3 minutes are over. So it looks like we do have Cole McGee. I apologize if I have mispronounced your name.
You got it.
Super wonderful. Cole, I am starting a timer, and the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, guys. My name is Cole McGee. I live at 21 Catherine Street in Portland, Maine. I have recently begun my second year as a building substitute at Ocean Avenue. And I'd like to start by thanking you guys for inviting me here to speak. Because building subs are not represented by unions. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to mention I'm in my second year as a building substitute at Ocean Avenue. And because building subs are not represented by unions, we are among the most vulnerable employees in our Portland public schools, and it means a great deal to me that you guys are willing to give me this time. I just wanted to touch on previously building subs were paid $175 a day and a $500 monthly stipend to help with individual healthcare costs. And the new plan states that building substitutes will now be paid $25 an hour, which will equate to $175 a day, except in the event of a delay or early release. And additionally, building substitutes will no longer receive the $500 monthly stipend. Instead, the district offers a $500 towards a PPS healthcare plan, with the substitute responsible for an additional $373.47 per month. This is a great concern to me, because removing $500 a month from substitute pay would result in over a 13% loss in my overall income. With that being said, just prior to this meeting, I was able to look at a revised plan in the agenda for this meeting. And this new plan makes me feel quite a bit more comfortable with the wages going forward. So I would like to thank the committee for the work that you guys have done to look out for us and to help ensure that we are financially compensated appropriately. So thank you.
Thank you, Cole. Any other? Okay, let's see, Beverly. It looks like Beverly also would like to give public comment. I'm going to refresh the timer. Let's see. Let's move Beverly over. Here we go. Beverly, go ahead. The floor is yours. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. I just would like to advocate for keeping the building subs whole. They really make a huge difference to our school. We're rarely having substitutes pick up the jobs that we have. And so it just allows us to get through with these building subs. And they hop from one classroom to the next. They are so flexible. They jump in, brother, like, I got this, let's go. And they're part of the community, so they know exactly how we do things, how we expect the kids to behave, and how what our mode of learning is. And they're just critical to making the schools function. And I think holding subs, the building subs whole, is great. And then and regular substitutes, you could raise their pay. Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you so much. Let's see, anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and we will move on to the rest of our meeting topics. Okay, let's see. So, let's actually start off. That's actually a really good segue. Let's discuss the rates of pay for substitute teachers. And I also just want to commend and express gratitude for the work that's been done around this. Ryan, I think you're on mute. Okay. So I wanted to express gratitude for the staff that's already put in effort on this issue to bring us to what we're going to discuss today. So are we, Jennifer, would you like to speak to this?
I would. Let me just share my screen. Great. So thank you very much for giving us the time to come back and revisit this topic. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about what I've found in the last week or so since we last talked about it, as well as some revisions and proposals that we're making for an adjustment moving forward. So the first thing I wanted to talk about and that I looked into was a little bit of the historical data around the rates for substitutes here in PPS. And what I found is that there was a rate change in the 22-23 school year, and it was sort of a trial run of some rates that then would have come to the board for formal approval for the 23-24 school year. And those rates took the basic substitute pay from $85 to $95 a day. For people with a bachelor's degree, moved that from $95 to $145 a day. Certified or retired teachers from $100 to $150. Dedicated subs from $150 to $175. And then long-term subs continue to be adjusted based on that lane 1, step 1 of the teacher salary schedule. The other things that happened in around that time Really, in large part, I think I expressed this last week at the board meeting as well, but in large part due to the additional funding during COVID to try to support and incentivize staff to return to the workplace, is that there were some additional funds used for this insurance stipend, which was $500 that was intended for employees to be able to use toward an insurance plan on the exchange under the Affordable Care Act, and as well as some dedicated time off for subs. So those things were all sort of put into place sometime in that COVID and with those rate changes officially in 22-23 and voted on in September of 23. The initial proposal that we brought to the board last week was sort of rethinking that $500 because what we are really working to do, I know Helene and I have talked a lot about this with Ryan, is looking to ensure compliance and accountability across all of our departments. And one of the areas that we really realized we needed to look at was the Affordable Care Act and were we in compliance in terms of what we were offering employees. And looking particularly at our subs who are working in either over 30-day assignments or for the full year for us. And so our determination was that we needed to redirect that $500, which we don't have that COVID funding anymore, but we still felt that this was really an important decision to make for our employees to continue to fund toward insurance. So we redirected that $500 as a contribution to a district medical plan that ensures us accountability for the use of those funds, and again, also brings us into that compliance with the Affordable Care Act, ACA. The other thing we looked at was dedicated paid time off and wanting to make sure that we're in compliance with Maine law around earned paid leave. And so we structured that a little bit as well. And as I shared last week, this does ensure some accountability for us because we can track the accruals and the usage in our ADP system. And also just ensures that all of our subs have access to this benefit. It is required by the law, but I think I shared last week as well that not everyone always seems to know that they have this time. So that will be tracked right in ADP and it will be accessible for the employees to see what their current accruals are. The other thing we looked at was changing our rates to hourly wages. Also, this will help us in ADP to better track our spending, to better ensure that the accruals are tracking appropriately because it is based on an hourly amount. And then our initial proposal had some rate changes to that first substitute group, which was the group that's less than a bachelor's, because when we looked at that day rate in an hourly fashion, we said this is not in compliance with minimum wage laws, and we felt that that was appropriate to ensure we were at least at or above minimum wage. So in bringing it to step one of the EdTech scale, that allowed us to get into that range with just over $16 an hour. And then we also did a rate change to the long-term subs, but that's consistent with past practice, staying with lane 1, step 1 of the teacher scale. So that's what we brought forward to the board last week and heard your feedback and wanted to go back in and revisit what we're doing. I do want to share, just as a point of reference, and I added a couple of other districts on this since the original upload, but wanted to kind of look at some of our surrounding districts. And we did find, in fact, that our wages are aligned with or higher than our nearby and comparable districts. So when we looked at Westbrook, MSAD 51, Falmouth, Scarborough, Lewiston. I don't need to read through all of those numbers there. I use Lewiston not because it's nearby, but because it's a city more aligned, and those other districts are local to us. So in looking at those rates, we see that where we're at, even where we're at now, is comparable, and I think where we're proposing is higher than these other districts. And keeping in mind that I highlighted, for example, with MSAD 51, that they do provide that 5 days of leave for their full-time substitutes, their dedicated substitutes, which is in line with what we're doing under earned paid leave. I could not find information from any of these other districts around whether they're providing any additional funds toward medical insurance or leave. I couldn't find any of that information on their websites. Doesn't mean it's not happening. It just wasn't readily available to me. So with that, we looked at making some adjustments, and the adjustments that we made, we decided to link those to our current salary schedules, because what that would allow for is on an annual basis, these rates would adjust as per some of our other salary schedules. A lot like we have with our long-term substitutes right now, where it sits in that step one of the teacher schedule. And so that's always going to adjust every year. This brings all of the other rates in line with that thinking, so that annually they'll see whatever increase those rates see. So where that has us now is that same proposal that we'd made originally on the less than a bachelor's degree, which is the $16.20 an hour aligned with EdTech 1 Step 1, and that is a $113.40 per day. For bachelor's degree, we aligned that with EdTech 3 Step 6, and that's a little increase to $149.94 per day. For our certified teachers, retired teachers, aligning that with EdTech 3 Step 8 takes that to $22.50 an hour, or $157.50 per day. For our dedicated substitutes, aligning that with EdTech 3 Step 14 takes that to $182.70 a day. Our nurse substitutes, we decided on 90% of the long-term sub rate for that, which comes to $29.91 an hour, or $209.37 a day. And then, of course, our long-term sub rate is aligned to our step one of our teacher contract. So that didn't change. That one remained the same in this revision. So some increases there on those overall day rates from for most of the groups from what we brought last week. And that sort of spreads these increases across all of our substitute groups instead of just having those increases in a couple of areas. We also have a modification of our benefits, and some of this is the same, but I didn't share this information in the document from last week, so wanted you to have this as well, which is that for our long-term and dedicated subs who worked for us in those roles last year, they will start with 40 hours or that 5 days of earned paid leave in their accruals already. Everyone else will start by earning it as they work. And then the other thing that we've put in here as a modification is that for the 24-25 school year only, as a way to sort of transition, as we transition to this shift of covering directly toward putting the money directly toward medical insurance, that long-term subs and dedicated subs who were in those positions in 23-24 would receive an additional bonus of $250 per month as an acknowledgement of making this shift. And then you can also see what the medical benefit options are for our substitutes there. So that's that $373.47 that Cole was referencing earlier when he spoke. And then I will talk to this a little bit, and then this will be a good slide to pass it over to Helene. But thank you, Helene. She pulled these numbers together. There had been a request at the last board meeting to have an idea of what the substitute expenditures look like for the district on an annual basis. And what you'll see, and Helene will, I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you'll see is that there's the budgeted amount and then the actual amount, those bottom two lines, budgeted and actual expenses. And you'll see that in fiscal year 22, 23, and 24, there's a pretty significant difference between what was budgeted and what that actual expense was. And my understanding is that that is because of the cost of the dedicated and long-term subs. And so for fiscal year 25, there was a shift in thinking in terms of how that was budgeted. And those dedicated and long-term subs are budgeted more under the staff lines as opposed to the sub lines, which is why it's separated out a little differently. And you can see that total anticipated budget of over 2.2 million between the dedicated subs, long-term subs, and daily subs, as well as subs that we bring in for ed techs. So with that, I will pass that part over to Helene, and then I'll keep sharing my screen because I think I'm in charge of that today.
I'm not quite sure if anybody had any questions on the sub piece, because I believe this is where it ends. Jennifer did a very good job of explaining the budget to actuals for the prior 3 years. Again, like she stated earlier, we in the 25 budget, we took out the long-term subs from the sub budget line just because of how we address them as an employee with the district, because they are here full year for the 183 days. So that was budgeted on a separate line item. But as you can see from FY25's total budget versus FY24's actual, it's not very different in what the overall costs we're anticipating for the year.
Thank you so much. I actually have a quick question for Board Chair Lentz, if that's possible. Board Chair Lentz, I'm hoping to get some clarity from you in terms of at the last business meeting. Were you expecting or envisioning that the committee would vote on this proposal or simply discuss it and ask questions? Looks like Board Chair Lentz might be unavailable to answer questions at the moment. So let's see what we have for questions. Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
I'll just say, since we referred it to the Finance Committee, we now need to vote it out, or we now need to take action.
Yeah, I wanted to confirm that was the vision. Yeah. Other questions? Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
Well, now I have a substantive thing. I don't have a question so much as like just really appreciating the work or the thought on this. And I want to thank Jennifer and everyone else involved in terms of adjusting the linking the rates to our current salary schedules such that they then automatically adjust in line with annual changes to those. I really deeply appreciate that move, the consistency, the ensuring that that our subs are actually seeing yearly increases in their wages, and yeah, this systematizing it. So just want to, I'm very happy to support this revised proposal and really appreciate the thought and work that's gone into it.
I will echo that for sure. And I do have a couple of quick questions. Let's see. So I really, really like the approach, not only around making sure that all of the substitute pay rates are tied to lanes and steps, so that there's improvement year over year for everybody. I really, really like that. Also, I like the approach of saying, anybody who was accustomed to this $500 last year and is continuing this year, rather than yanking the rug out from under you, it's $250 for one additional year. If my math is correct, I did a little bit of quick, back of the napkin, the increase. So the $175 a day to I think it was $182.70. That I think amounts to about $170 a month, if my math is correct. Plus the $250, that means that somebody in this situation would be getting about $420 a month for this academic year. Is that approximately correct?
I did not do the math, but I know when I originally was working on it, I had a similar number.
Yeah, okay.
And I think the other thing to consider is that, that these rates are sitting with EdTech, with EdTech, as we know from public comment last week too. So when those EdTech salaries settle, then these rates will shift as well.
And just a super quick related question to that. So in your comments earlier, I caught it just caught my ear that the lane 1 step 1 of the EdTech contract being 16 something. My understanding from previous conversations is that there are very few people who come in as an EdTech lane 1 step 1 EdTech 1, and that it's primarily EdTech 3s. Is that still accurate? Okay, super. Wonderful. Okay, so one more question about the matter at hand. I just want to be super duper clear, both for myself and members of the community, in the compliance side of this around the ACA. I want to make sure that I primarily, but everybody is understanding it's the access to health insurance that is the compliance requirement, correct? And then the $500 is like, we would be compliant. I'm not saying we should do this, but we would be compliant if we offered health insurance benefits and did not contribute, correct? Okay, super. Thank you for
Oh,
confirming.
sorry. We have to make an offer, and Helene might be able to better answer this, but we're supposed to make an offer of insurance, and it has to meet certain criteria in terms of its affordability.
Okay.
So there's a process to determine that, but the plan that we have in place along with the district contribution meets that criteria.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Board Chair Lenz, I apologize for asking you a question when you weren't available, but I think we've resolved it in terms of needing to vote on this to move it out of committee. But I see you have your hand raised, and I'm checking to see whether you also have other things to say.
Yeah, just one other question, and apologies. We are still transitioning back to routine in my house, and it's a little tough here. What I was going to ask was just in terms of you, Jennifer, you said that when EdTech negotiations are settled, that the wages would move in relation to that. But when would these rates kick in, and are they retroactive? Like, could you just explain a little bit of when will this kick in, and then if there will be any retroactive pay throughout this year?
So I will defer to Helene on the concept of retro. These rates, I think we'll bring this to, if it moves through committee, we'll bring it to the board tomorrow. And as long as the board approves the rates, we should be able to hustle in the HR department to enter those rates in to be effective for this current pay period, which started on September 3rd. If it were not to pass board tomorrow, then we'd maintain the rates that we have in place until such time as we pass something through board, and then we would make that adjustment at that time.
As a follow-up question, and I'm not sure if this is where Board Chair Lentz was going as well. So if we pass this out of committee and it goes to the business meeting and it sails through there as well, as is, so the rates that we're talking about in this proposal would apply for this entire academic year? Question mark. And then, would any potential increases in terms of tying to lanes and steps, would that happen at the beginning of the next academic year? Or alternatively, are we talking about a situation where substitute rates of pay would change mid-year?
We have not discussed that, so I'm a little reluctant. I know I have my own opinion on that, but I will see if I can have a response to that before we leave the meeting. Is that fair?
That would be great. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, can I jump in here real quick and just sort of offer sort of two thoughts? One is retro pay is actually difficult to administer and to do right, and adds complexity, right? And so in general, we want to avoid that if possible, and we want to make sure we keep our employees whole as much as possible, right? So from a structural end and from a finance end, in general, we like to avoid retro pay because it means we have to go back and calculate and reissue pay and potentially have to recalculate Maine PERS and recalculate contributions and all of those pieces, right? And we're talking about for a small window of time. And I provide that guidance to you, and at the end would look to the board to say, how much do you want to prioritize retro pay versus, I mean, right now we have to, as staff, administer the pay rates that are in effect. And so, right, so we're going to continue with that until the board passes a new rate and says, here's what it is. In terms of the adjustment of the rate, I think that part of the reason we have them earmarked to a rate is so that they do adjust, right? And I think we become like in a difficult spot if they don't adjust as contracts adjust.
So, for example, if lane one, step one of the EdTech contract changes at some point in the next window of time before the end of the academic year, you're saying that ADP would functionally also change substitute rates of pay at the same time.
At that time.
Okay. Yes. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I agree that retroactivity is pain in the neck and all. But I would want that to happen for the long-term subs, if that were to go on. I mean, would that happen? The ones that are there for the full year, they've started, they know they have the full year. We've tied to teachers. Is that, it's not, I guess that one's not tied to ed tech, but it's tied to teachers. So that would not change until next year anyway. But my question is, with people that are more regular as opposed to the in and out of subs in the system, it would be important, I think, to make sure that those who are here for the full year do have whatever benefit happens for the full year. If I'm making myself perfectly confusing, but that is my.
You're making yourself very clear. Our system is very complex, and the reality is that when we talk about this idea of long term, we have long term, and then we kind of have really long term, right? Yeah. So we have people that are on 1-year contracts where we know that they will be here for the year. Mm-hmm. They are not in the chart that we are talking about. They are on 1-year teacher contracts.
Okay.
And their salary is on a 1-year teacher contract. And so they're not part of what we're talking about at all.
Okay. That was the group I was most concerned about. And you're saying, though, that if someone is in for like a month, that would not change. If they started now and the ed tech situation changes in midstream for them, would that be, again, I know Lean's saying, please don't say this, but would you go and that, say, 4 to 6 weeks and fix it to the beginning of that time, or would it then click in at the moment the ed tech signs off on a 6-week type situation?
So, yeah, what you're saying makes sense. I want to make this really simple because I think adding ed tech into here complicates it. So let's just make it really simple. So on Tuesday, the board has the option of voting to approve new rates. Mm-hmm. Let's just say that for some reason the board doesn't vote because it doesn't have a quorum, and this gets pushed to October. Okay. And our dedicated subs are at $175. The board could choose, when they choose to raise the dedicated sub from $175 to $182.70, they could say, we want you to go back and give all of our dedicated subs that retro $7.70. That's a choice. That is a complex thing for us to do because we have things that go on that are impacted, such as retirement, some benefits pieces that are impacted by this. So it's not just giving pay of calculating how many hours did they work and giving the $7.70 per hour, but also factoring in other pieces. So my own recommendation would be that we just get in the habit of having this be automatic so that every year we don't have to have this conversation, and it happens at the beginning of the year, so there's no issue. In this case, we're a couple of days past that, and I think it's unfortunate, but I would recommend that we don't do retro and that we move forward just for fear of messing it up or having it wrong, or also just recognizing the level of work that it'll put on our finance team and all of the other pieces that they do. That said, I also recognize that our folks have worked. And so if the board said, we want you to make it retro to the first day that somebody worked, that is a choice.
So therefore, if we are sending something onto the board, we need to say that this will hold at the current rate for the year, as opposed to saying it's tied to ed tech. Because
you'll say that it's effective as of the date.
Yes.
That it's passed. And you'll say that the hourly rate will adjust if they're earmarked to ed techs when the ed tech contract adjusts. That's it. Okay. And so it'll just be effective as of that new date.
And we should say, if we're not going to do retroactive, then we should say it is not retroactive at some point, because otherwise it will get muddy a little bit long. But I appreciate your clarity. Thank you.
Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to voice support for the superintendent's proposal. I think this is a really important structural change. I'm very supportive of it. I do not think we should make it retroactive to the beginning of the year, nor do I think we should make it retroactive once the EdTech contract is agreed to. So I would like to move forward with this proposal, but without any retroactive activity.
So Board Member Figdor, are you making a motion to move this
Yes.
along? Wonderful. And do I have a second? Board Member Opperman, wonderful, thank you. And we will just go through the committee members. Board Member Figdor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Opperman, how do you vote? I see a yes. You're muted, but I saw you say
Yes, it was a yes.
Okay. Board Member Noor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Wonderful. And I, as chair, am also voting yes. So the motion passes unanimously to send this proposal on to the full board at tomorrow's business meeting. Wonderful. Thank you very much for a really good conversation. And again, thank you to staff for all of the work that you did since in the last 6 days, 4 business days to bring this to us. I really appreciate it. Moving on, committee update. Is that going to be Helene and Jennifer?
It will. It's gonna go to Helene. Can I just say one thing in transition? Just
yes.
A big thank you to first the board in the process, but then to the staff. I think this is a really good example of where we took a starting proposal and based on feedback and then work of staff landed in a better spot. And so just a really good model of how we can iterate and improve on things. And so just a thank you to everybody, but particularly the board and then the staff for digging in on this. So thank you. Helene, I think it's to you now for just a quick update on staffing. And then Chair Bryden, I think it's going to come to you for the question on the ARC for the committee.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Good afternoon. So I just wanted to start out by explaining that the finance team will start providing monthly financials to the committee beginning in October. We felt that was a good start off point only because September is the month when all of our school year staff begin. So when we see the first financials, it'll include all of our employees of the district rather than starting with a month that's not a full staff list. So just wanted to bring that forward to the committee, the finance committee. I just want to reassure you that we do plan on bringing forward monthly financials. It's just we figured October would be a good kickoff to start that in October, showing what September's the first quarter looks like with everyone included in that financial. In regards to how we're moving forward, we're building a sustainable experience team. Currently, the finance department has hired 2 payroll specialists. We increased that amount of specialists because we wanted to dive deeper into the payroll process as we're doing it, as well as ensure that we're creating redundancy. As what happened 2 years ago, we only had one person who knew how to do payroll. This would make sure we avoid that from ever happening again. I just hired our accounting manager. She starts October 7th. She comes with 37 years of experience in accounting, and she'll be helping manage both our general and special revenue funds and the day-to-day accounting operations and our audit compliance. She'll also be supervising our staff accountant and our general accountant. So this will allow for again, redundancy besides me being that person that's managing the staff and in the financials, I'll have someone who also is helping me review that information. There is an offer out to our payroll manager. She has 21 years of experience. She's coming back this week, actually. She wants to talk to me a little bit more about some of the more detailed in regards to benefits and whatnot. But we did put an offer out to her. So, but the plan with her is to ensure that we maintain payroll compliance. Right now, I'm doing that job. So as we're reviewing, going into payroll, it's to ensure that we still check all the boxes that has to do with auditing, internal controls, making sure that we have all of our supporting documentation when we pay employees and whatnot, and ensuring that we stay up with our rules and regulations with when it comes to whether it's Maine PERS, the state, those other items that are happening in the background. And just also an update, we have decided in finance that this year we are not going to engage with the CPA firm we have in the past for our year-end audit. So this will be our first year, I believe, since the last 2 years that we will not be engaging in support to manage that audit process. So I thought that was also a big win, because as we true up our staffing and finance, we feel that we definitely could take that responsibility on in-house. And then I will shift over, if there's no questions about the staffing and finance, I can shift over to our working agenda for the committee. I just didn't know what you wanted to do, Chair Bryden.
Yeah, so thank you. If you would prefer to give your entire update, we can take questions at the end.
Okay. So just wanted to give some highlights to some of the deadlines that we have coming up within finance and HR as we're looking at our calendar for committee. Finance currently is working on starting to close out those September 30th grants that were for FY24. Those end September 30th. So we're currently working on that. I have the director of grants, Ms. Gail Cressy is working with our grant accountant and with our department heads to look at what grants need to make sure that we invoice, that we spend down, and since we have about 3 weeks left of those grants. The other item that's coming up for finance department is as we're going to start upticking towards our year-end close. I just spoke to the city today. The city said that the city auditors will be here the first week of December. So we are working towards getting ready for that. And just to let you know, when the city auditors were here earlier for our interim audit, what they do is they interview our staff and review internal controls. And I actually got a very positive feedback from the city auditors in regards to the changes that have been made to date. As from last year to this year, they're very happy seeing the amount of change that we have accomplished in the 1 year. And then just to give you a heads up, I didn't know exactly when we're going to get the audit report, but last year we got it in mid-March. So I just wanted to put that out there so that way the committee was aware of when things happen and when we would see the results of that financial. So hopefully, if everything stays on timing target, we should see the financial year end for 24 no later than, I would say, mid-March. And then the last item that also, while we're looking into what we want the committee to tackle, HR is also working on a staffing certification that's due in October, and then they will be able to report out to the committee in the time frame of November for that. And with that, then I will move forward, Jennifer, if you can, to the next slide, because then that kind of shows where we kind of left off last committee meeting. These were some of the items we put forward in the last committee, and with what I just spoke about and what we were tackling in finance and HR. I brought forward what we originally had and didn't know if the committee was supposed to finalize the discussion about creating that established working agenda.
Right. I think this slide is the ARC slide that that Dr. Skellen was referring to earlier.
Yes.
So what I will do is I'll check in to see if there are any questions about the last couple of slides before we start this topic ARC conversation. I know I have one or two. So just checking to see if anybody else has a question as well. I can just ask my question. So I have one. So if you could go back one slide, please.
Jennifer.
Is Jennifer still driving the slides? If you could go back, that'd be super. Thank you so much. Okay. And actually, Jennifer, if you're able, I have a quick question about what NEO stands for in NEO staff certification and whether this is the same or different topic from the business meeting recently where we talked about certifications that needed to be caught up within the district.
Got it. So there's a couple of different things. There's the CHRC, which is the fingerprinting piece, which we would have talked about around making sure that we're not having people working in our schools that haven't gone through that. And then NEO, I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what it stands for. So I'm going to look it up because it's a great question. We just always talk about NEO in the department, the NEO. But basically what that's doing is that's looking at like what the it's kind of looking through the Department of Education system. We enter people into the system as part of their background check, and we enter what their role is, that they work with us, what they're teaching, and then we get like a side-by-side against what's with the Department of Education in terms of their certification. And so we're really looking as if we hired this person to be a high school English teacher, do they have a certification that matches that? And when that's not aligned, then we have to kind of dig deeper to find out what happened with that. We definitely have found some errors where maybe someone was a high school English teacher 10 years ago, and they've switched into now they're an elementary third grade teacher, and they're appropriately certified, but we maybe have not made that switch on our end. So that is definitely work that we're cleaning up to make sure that that data is aligned. And then ultimately, what that's going to show us is it's going to show us what violations we have. And so then we can look at like whether do we have violations in special ed teaching, or if we have any teacher violations, we would want to understand why that's happened and what our pathway is to provide support to those staff members to correct those violations.
Okay, that was really helpful. Thank you so much. And then I have two quick things for Helene. So I have a quick question, just a terminology question. Again, for my benefit and for anybody in the community who is watching or might watch the recording of this, I just want to confirm what I think is true, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. So in the middle of this slide, city auditors, I just want to confirm that's not auditors who are employees of the city of Portland, Maine. It's like external auditors that work for an external auditing firm, and they are auditing the city finances and the district finances, correct?
That is correct. I just wanted to use that terminology to differentiate between the audit firm that we're using internally versus the audit firm that audits us financially with the city.
Super. And then the other thing for you is not a question, but just I wanted to acknowledge on the previous slide, the part about not using an external CPA firm. I just, kudos. Yay. Congratulations. I'm really excited about that. Thank you for that update. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of things related to the CPA. How much are we saving by not doing that? External CPA group. Would it be good to know that roughly in thousands of dollars?
There isn't going to be any savings because I actually had not, when we went through the budget process, I did not include a cost to have them to use them. So there wouldn't be any cost savings for that.
Okay,
there wouldn't be an overspend. That's for sure.
So that was, and so therefore, because we have new people, that will be a situation ongoing and a stronger department. Correct.
Yes.
We will not have the headaches we've had in the past. My other question has to do with to Jennifer, in reference to the certification, because I have some interest in understanding. As you gave the example of an English teacher moving to third grade and being appropriately certified to do that and keeping account of it, my understanding on certification is that you certify K through 8 and then 7 through 12, and that overlap in middle school is of interest to me in understanding how, from a curriculum and policy committee thought is, will we in the board in the meeting in November, will we be able to know percentage wise who how many people are K8 or 7-12 teaching in any particular grade?
I think I can probably, if I know ahead of time that there's a specific data point like that you would like, then we can pull out those data points to share with you. So I'm going to make a note right now that you would be curious to know what percentage of our staff are K8 and what percentage are 7-12. And are you also looking to know who's in that like middle
Yes.
band?
No, for example, if is a person who's teaching in 8th grade, a 7-12 math teacher, and I don't need to know the specifics of the person to person, but that's the idea to say that we have people teaching at that level that are more than well qualified, not only because they understand the nature of preteens, but also that they understand the pedagogy of content area that they're teaching. So that's my concern.
Got it. Okay, understood. I will also share, since I have you, that I have the AI overview, Sarah, of NEO, and it basically just says NEO can stand for multiple things in education, including the Maine Department of Education's Enterprise Data System, which I don't see an NE or O necessarily for that. So I'll keep digging, but that's what I got at.
Yeah, that's a fascinating first pass at Google. That's thank you for sharing that. Any other questions from board members? Okay. So Jennifer, if you could now move us back to the slide with all the topics, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay. So, right, as Ryan alluded to a few moments ago, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is just sort of getting in place this arc of topics over the academic year. Obviously, September's not on this slide because we're in this conversation right now. But sort of at a high level, I'm not going to read the slide, but at a high level, what we're going to be talking about and focusing on at each of our monthly committee meetings from now until June. Okay, so one question that I have is, so I'm wondering if it would make sense, and I'm looking for staff to opine on this. I'm wondering if it would make sense to have the February topic, the review of progress on strategic initiatives 1.1 and 4.1, move that to May. And then in February, use that meeting to talk about a small handful of budget related items that committee members might appreciate to get some additional detail on. I'm thinking about things like the financial impact of moving middle schoolers to the metro system. I'm thinking about transportation costs related to the crossing guard contract. I'm thinking about anything that might have come out of the boundaries committee by the end of January, specifically, elementary and middle school models, and, whether there might be any budgetary impact from that work. Would that make sense to move the February topic to May and use the February meeting for those sorts of things?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I think that may be the case, although we do want to know that what's going on with the initiatives. And also, again, because I'm on the two committees, as policy thoughts are going into one committee, I'm interested in knowing how we can interact and, things that policy and curriculum starts talking about affects finance personnel, et cetera, et cetera. So, transportation and everything. So I'm interested in knowing how that crossover can happen and where it should happen in the year. So wherever it's put, that's one piece I would be interested in making sure happens.
Yeah, so I think Board Member Opperman, you make an interesting point. I wonder if what I was talking about in terms of a potential way to use the time that we have in February, the things that I mentioned, as well as maybe, one or two other examples of budgetary impacts from decisions that have been made or work that is going on. For example, the Boundaries Committee or the Policy and Curriculum Committee, if there happens to be an example there. Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
I had a slightly off this direct conversation comment, but I have an opinion on this, which is I think it's not that often that policy changes actually have financial impacts that we would consider outside the budget process. So I think the budget process is really the appropriate place to look at overlap. I do wonder if we need more. If it would be helpful to have more time on the budget prior to March. Really, the budget's being finalized in March. And so if there's earlier work on behalf of this committee, I see that as an opportunity. So that was my one thought.
Yeah. And Board Member Figdor, hopefully, the way I framed my suggestion, hopefully it landed in a clear way, because that's what I was getting at was, we use February to talk about things that, will be instructive as we lead into the rest of the budget conversation in March. Helene, go ahead.
In regards to speaking about the budget, I believe we went ahead and had a very separate calendar once we proposed going into it, which included, I believe, some extra time
for sure. Yep.
Conversations around budget.
Yep.
So I just want to remind everybody of that as well.
Okay. We're going to have so many meetings. Budget. I think what I was actually, Sarah Warren, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to add a little bit of context from the Policy and Curriculum Committee. We're still wrestling with the ARC for that committee as well, which will happen more on Wednesday. But at the moment, the current draft has us talking about Strategic Initiative 1.1, which is equity. So one of the ones you've named here. In October, it would just be an update. And then a transportation conversation around transportation policy in December. And we were doing that to try to get it in before we really hit full throttle budget conversations around that. So not that we would necessarily be ready for the committee to make policy changes there. I don't know that yet, but that was the idea, was to try to position ourselves in time.
Okay. Thank you for that. And that does sort of tie in nicely with what I was going to ask next. I was going to clarify that my question to staff was essentially, if we were to move the review of progress on strategic initiatives 1.1 and 4.1, if we were to move that to May, would that cause difficulty or challenge? Okay.
No, it would not cause any problems.
Okay.
I think, Chair, I would offer sort of two thoughts on your proposal. One is it would be helpful to know as far in advance what topics, and it can't be a laundry list just because of capacity,
Sure.
but to have a very small number of targeted things that we are looking at. And I think that January SIP approval meeting is also not a full meeting.
Okay.
Right? The SIP will have been reviewed in December. And so between December, January, and February, there is, right, that December meeting has budget priorities. January is a SIP review. And so it'd be helpful to know very early on, as in even in the October meeting, here are 3 priorities we'd like to understand budget implications of.
Mm-hmm.
That gives finance and others time to then look into and prepare for
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in preparation for those December, January, and February meetings.
Yep. So the January SIP approval, I'm just chuckling because it's as though nothing will come up as a surprise topic. I mean, it's entirely possible that that will also happen for any of these meetings. But I take your point. Board Member Fictor, go ahead.
Yeah, and the type of conversations that I was talking about, that I was alluding to in terms of budget conversations early in the year, early in the new year, are things like a bigger picture kind of strategy conversations, implications as a result, potential budget implications as a result of the Boundaries Committee, updates on our fund balance, kind of the big structural pieces, so the board can be involved on the front end. So the Finance Committee can be involved on the front end, on the front end. Excuse me, it's late. It's been a long day. Work on my prepositions. But just looking at this, my biggest piece of feedback is like, I don't think the Finance Committee should be, they think the Finance Committee meeting should be involved earlier in the process. And I'm sure that's the intention, but I would want it reflected here as well.
Just to clarify, are we looking at maybe like sort of starting to, and I do see you, Board Member Opperman, but I want to clarify, Emily, what you're saying, that perhaps we're starting to coalesce around potentially January being the SIP approval, and because that's likely to be a relatively short portion of the meeting, a discussion of committee members' focus areas, priority areas, sort of things like that. And then we can move from that and most likely that conversation will see a few, 2 or 3 items fall out of that conversation in terms of could staff please do some research, run some numbers, and be able to then in February discuss budgetary impacts of some of those bigger picture type things, and then move into March, April budget conversation as we have done in the past. And then in May, do the review of progress on those strategic initiatives. Is that sort of what you were getting at, Emily?
No, I think about it differently. As I'm not sure I would want to put forward in January my own interests or priorities, but more structurally, where it ends, how the budget's looking, where's the fund balance, what's the superintendent seeing as our priorities, and where, big picture before we get into the details, where, and based on, the work of the year, kind of big picture where it looks like we're going to be some ballpark numbers in terms of, how the budget process might play out. I guess I prefer that it's, it starts as a superintendent's budget, right? And I think that's the right place for it to start. Certainly, if there are issues that board members want to bring to the table, that plays out throughout our processes, right?
Yep. Yes, yeah. Thank you for clarifying. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I understand what you're saying, Emily, and just in other words, how much money we think we're going to have to spend ahead of time, and so before we start divvying it up, and we can't know that because ultimately we don't know that until April, May, June. But my question had to do with what you brought up, Chair, about getting feedback from the Committee on Redistricting, and thinking on the transportation impact of that, and maybe some other, if they actually get to something on middle school. What, do we have any idea when they're going to get anything out to us? And I don't know that you know that answer, but that's a question I have.
I believe it is time bound, but I don't have it committed to memory. Helene, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify for timing as far as the prioritization. The earliest fund balance would probably be available is when that audit is ended. So like I mentioned in the previous slide, that would be in the mid-March timeframe that we would know exactly where we are budget as far as our fund balances.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to point that out
Yeah.
when you're reviewing the months and prioritizing.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
Sorry, just one last one, and just like my focusing on, let's look at the big picture, early on in the year and have a sense of it as a board, have a sense of the priorities the superintendent might be bringing to the budget. That also needs to kind of scaffold conversations that we're having with our state legislative delegation as well as with the city council. So I think it's really important that the conversations should happen all year round, but certainly need to happen, well before the superintendent's budget comes out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I am feeling all of what you said, yes, and also I'm feeling as though moving the February topic down to May sounds like it's not going to cause any angst or yield a less good conversation about that. So I do think that using February as part of the January meeting, February, to sort of have it's always budget season. We will spend 4 monthly meetings discussing the budget because it's very important, and that's how we're going to get to the best possible outcome. I think that is the appropriate place to land. Any concerns about that before we move on? Great. Okay. I believe the last topic that we have, let's see, we have 17 minutes, and we are going to get a transportation update. So I will hand it over. Is it Ben that's going to give that?
Yep, that's me.
Let me kick us off while Ben is loading the slide deck. So as most people here know, we have a brand new transportation management team. So Ben Lesavoy is our new director. Katie Lamb is here as well as our assistant director. And we have a new dispatcher as well. So we restructured in the office, and Jim is our new dispatcher, but he's not here tonight. So we've got Ben and Katie presenting. And I just have to say before they dive in that I couldn't be more proud of this team and what they've managed to pull off in a very short time. Ben just joined in February. Katie and Jim started in July, and nonetheless managed to come up to speed on a very complex operation and launched the year off in a way that we should all be happy about. It's not perfect, it never will be, but it was a remarkably smooth start to the year given all that they had to take on. So I will hand over to Ben from here. Thank you, Ben.
So hello, everybody. I'm Ben Lesavoy. I haven't met most of you yet. I met Julie, not you, Sarah or Emily, but nice to meet you. This is my first year working in a school district. I've been in logistics for about 8 years, but I can tell you the start of the year is definitely a challenge. There's a lot that goes into it. We've routed 2,000 plus students onto buses and vans this year. So far, we have trained our drivers and assistants and van drivers during our professional development days on new standard operating procedures surrounding safety and efficiency, along with behavior management, safety, and we had the multilingual team present on cultural awareness for many of our families that we transport. We had 12 central office staff that rotated during the first 4 days of school, or 3 days of school, Tuesday through Thursday. And they were assisting on the buses in the morning to make sure that none of the students that got on were going to the wrong schools. And in addition to that, what we learned was it would also be very helpful to have them in the afternoons during on the first day of kindergarten and pre-K. So that's probably something that we'll want to look at next year. We conducted kindergarten practice runs for all schools that requested it. The Reiki run was covered by Channel 6 and the Portland Press Herald, and we introduced the new bus tag system for elementary students, and they were distributed on the first day of school. Schools are still making new tags for late registrations, but I think it really helped in the afternoons for the drivers to be able to see which children needed to be placed with parents at drop-off. I'll pass this on to Katie here.
Yeah, so we've been working really hard, not only ahead of the year to get the routes put together for all of the students, but, as you know, once we get that information out to families, there are questions and requests and all of that. In addition to intake of students who maybe we didn't know about having special ed requirements, needing to be switched from one bus to another and things like that. So in the last week, we've gotten over 300 requests for new routing and some changes. I'm happy to say that at this moment, there are 21 open requests and 17 came today. So we're barreling through it as fast as we can. So that's been great. And we're also seeing steady new enrollment of students coming in. So working on getting those kids on buses as quickly as possible. We have to keep adjusting the routes with working with the schools for timing, as well as any sort of glitches that they're having. And then we have also gotten to manage to deal with a few bus breakdowns during that first week and getting buses swapped over to other drivers. So continuing to work on the maintenance, Jim has been really working in tandem with South Portland to get our buses back and operational as fast as we can.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here. The staffing has been an ongoing effort over the past, I'm sure for a very long time, but certainly since I've been here for the past year. And Ben has really been taking this and pushing it forward. As you probably remember, the board approved extra positions for this school year because our goal was to try to increase our own internal capacity so that we could reduce our reliance on contracts, which is bearing fruit already. We're not fully where we want to be yet. We've got 3 more vacancies to fill on the bus driver side, and 1 assistant. I think we thought was filled when we did the deck, and now it will be filled soon. But so you can see the count here, a total count of 46 people. One of the things to highlight is that also in that board budget process, there was approval for 5 van drivers to be added, which the team has really been using to take off some of the pressure that we've had around pickup and drop off for our McKinney-Vento students, some of whom may either be coming from far or need to be transported to another district, as well as for our out-of-district runs for students with specialized programming needs in other special education programs. So the staffing, I think, is remarkably good given what we're seeing in some of our colleague districts around us. And I attribute that not only to hard work on the part of the team in recruiting, but also just our relatively positive pay scale. I'll just jump to the bottom for a second. So back when the base contract was renegotiated, I wasn't here. None of us were here that are on the team right now. But it was built around making sure that we were competitive with surrounding districts. And so you can see the scale there, drivers making starting salary of $21.33 and then up as high as $26.94 an hour. And then our assistants anywhere from $17.99 up to $22.07. And we have also sustained the MOU that was established in 2023 and used the $3,000 signing bonus that was offered there as an incentive to try to draw in more potential candidates for our driver jobs. And then just to say again that the work around adding staff is starting to bear fruit, including that the team was able to change the routes so that we are now staffing and using our own bus for the Margaret Murphy run down to Saco, which was costing us, Ben, am I right, $4,600 a week? I think in contracted costs. We had been using in some situations school staff and paying them and signing a contract with them to bring students to and from places that were farther away, which was not a very comfortable place to be. We didn't want to keep doing that, and we've been able to cut that practice out by using vans and by adding these additional staff. So not fully there yet, but we're on the right track in terms of shifting that balance of staff versus contracts.
I'll just add one more piece to that. As we continue to figure out how we're going to use our van drivers the best, I expect that we'll be able to bring back some of the safe care students as well. So, for example, we just brought back another one this week that we were spending $2,000 a week with safe care to transport. So we have new systems and processes in our department. I created 15 new standard operating procedures over the summer, everything from distracted driving to bus clear inspections to pre and post trip inspections, bus evacuations, how to be in contact with a mechanic in South Portland for maintenance requests, along with standard operating procedures for trip assignments. Our new behavior management system, I worked with Joanna Frankel and Chris Reiger on, and basically the old form looked like it was created on a typewriter, so we had to update that. But the new form actually aligns with the Swiss system that's utilized in schools. So it allows us to actually be part of the school and allows us to, recommend kind of actions on what might need to happen when something happens on a bus. And it also gives a good spot for us to track data with regards to behavior management. The backpack tags for all pre-K and kindergarten bus riders we went through, they all have tags on their backpacks as of now, and then the first through fifth graders will have red tags, and the majority of them do as well. We moved the keys back into the office for the buses. They were previously in lock boxes inside the buses, but we moved the keys into the office so that we could, see the drivers when they come in and make sure they come in, right? Yep. I created a 2-week driver training plan for everybody that starts with us. It runs through everything that they need to know to be safe on the road and also what to do in certain situations. I put that together with the help of Bill Lamb. He's our driver trainer. He's been excellent with regards to, figuring out the best way to train drivers, school bus drivers in particular. I previously came from, freight and truck driving, and this is a different animal altogether. So he has a lot of great knowledge when it comes to managing students on the bus and getting them to and from safely to school. We shifted all our trip requests from Trip Tracker into Traversa and provide training to school-based staff to be able to use Traversa for all of our basically trip requests and routing. So what that does is it helps us create a fleet schedule in Traversa. So when we assign trips and create runs, we're actually able to see the exact times and who is available to do them instead of using different systems to get the same outcome. On September 24th, trainers from out of state are coming to train the drivers on the new tablets that we just received. We are road testing them currently with a couple drivers. We found a couple glitches that we need to work with Tyler on, but overall, I think that it's going to really improve efficiency for us, along with safety, and reduce the number of ETA requests that we have to put out to the drivers so they can focus on the road and operating safely. The system actually provides digital routes to the drivers, so we are able to, they can pull up the route and has a navigation feature, so we'll be going away from all the paper that we're using in the office. It gives drivers the access to basic student info, so that coupled with the student ID numbers that are on the tags, they can search and find students in the system. It allows us to track the bus locations and their timing so we can continue to monitor them. And our DVIRs, our inspection reports, will all be digitalized. So the information, as soon as it's entered in the system, will go to the mechanic in South Portland, and he'll be able to create work orders through the system and again eliminate the need of paper DVIRs. Katie, I think this one's you.
Yeah, so in addition, of course, to doing all of the regular routing and getting our van runs together, we've also gotten a whole bunch of requests. We have all of the fall high school athletic trips scheduled already, not assigned to drivers yet, but scheduled, so we know when they all are. We were able to put some vendors on runs that we knew we wouldn't be able to cover because they leave during school times. And then we're able to use our own staff to help with that, to bring people home, kind of reduce how much we're using the vendors for that. And then today the late buses started. So Lincoln, King, and Lyman Moore all have a late run. And I didn't hear too much on that, except for one school put some kids that didn't have a stop on it. So we'll work that out. And then we'll start getting requests for field trips here any day, I'm assuming. And Learning Works won't start until the 30th, is my understanding.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah. Yep.
For our folks following at home, can you just talk a little bit about the late bus? I got a number of questions over the last week just about the late bus, how it works, what time it is, and maybe you can just point people to a website. That would be great.
Yeah, so for example, King, I think, has a 4:15 and a 5 o'clock late bus. More, I can't think of the times off the top of my head. What is it? So, can I get back to you on that, Ryan?
Yes, in fact, can I just request that we share with each school something that they can send out to their communities by the end of the week so that everybody knows exactly what the late bus is, how it works, timing, that sort of thing?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. We do a lot of work on our own, but we also rely on partners to move a lot of our students. And in particular, we hugely value the partnership with Metro, which transports most of our high school age students. We still transport a few of those internally, especially students that require specialized transportation. But that Metro partnership is really invaluable. Casco Bay Lines brings in students that live on the islands but attend school on the mainland. ACMS is the parent company for the Crossing Guard Company, and we work with them on posting crossing guards. And then Tyler Technologies is the parent company for all the software that we're using, which now is primarily Traversa. But as you heard a couple minutes ago, we're also working with them to get these tablets on the buses, which introduces a whole new level of sort of efficiency and effectiveness and hopefully safety to our programming. And just as a reminder, that tablet-based program was something that we're funding through some of the last of the ESSER COVID grant funding.
Thank you for that clarification.
And I was trying to figure out, but we have a huge savings with Casco Bay Lines with their new rate structure. I want to say that's tens of thousands of dollars. They really reduced their costs this year, so that's great.
Ben, before you go on, can I just add one other piece? Because it won't show up as a savings because it was budgeted at this. And I know it's a pain point for some members on the committee because of how expensive it actually is. But the crossing guards, we had to negotiate pretty fiercely because they came in at over $500,000 for their services this year, and we were able to hold them at $400,000. And so credit to Sarah Warren for negotiating that at $400,000. And I think actually either maintaining or adding services within it. So we didn't lose, but just credit there.
We lost, just to clarify, we did lose 3 crossing guards.
Sorry about
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, but they had come in, I think, don't remember off the top of my head. I think it may have been as high as 586 is what's sticking in my head, their estimate. And we didn't have that. We had budgeted for 400. And so we just figured out a way to structure the contract around 400. So we will be doing over the next couple of months more of a survey with them so that we can get a better handle on just how many students are crossing at each of the sites. We took out guards where we had evidence already that there were really no students at all, not a few, but none. So those were the ones that we took away. We did add a site at near Rowe at the request of the community there. But once we do the survey, we're hoping we may be able to find other areas for greater efficiency.
Super. So just a quick question. I'm curious whether, so the cadence of conversation has shifted. So I'm wondering if this is the last slide.
It is not.
Okay. How many slides do we have?
We got 3 more.
Okay. So we are over time. So can we go quickly and hopefully be
Absolutely.
I'm just really mindful of the fact that this is like the dinner hour and it's a really long day. So I'd like to wrap up by 7:45.
I hear you. I've been up since 4:30.
You share my
goal. So our upcoming priorities are training our new drivers and support staff. One of our van drivers is going for a minibus license, hopefully within the next month. We have a Portland adult ed graduate who's currently assisting on a bus. He has his CDL permit, so all he needs to do is a road test, and he will be a driver for us. We're going to continue to work on staffing, filling our driver vacancies. Over the next month, we'll be conducting evacuation drills at schools with all students. We are road testing Tyler tablets on our buses, and our state annual reporting is due by October 1st, so we're going to begin working on that. Go ahead, Katie.
We just wanted to talk a little bit about what we could use for some support from the community. We have had a few instances of buses being passed with their red lights out and their stop signs out. So just any reminder to make sure that you're mindful of that. And then the next thing that is would help us with efficiency is really making sure that our pre-K and kindergarten families that require an adult to be present at the stop are there to meet their students. That's always a pain point, and we do not like bringing students back to school, and schools don't like receiving students back. So all working together to see if we can get that a little bit more smooth. And then the other thing is we often get requests for a kid to ride home with a friend, and we really can't accommodate that just for safety reasons and bus capacity reasons.
All right, and that is all we have. Any questions?
So I will just start by saying thank you so much, Ben, Katie, and Sarah. Just amazing work. Thank you so much. I made like 4 notes. Wow, and just I appreciate all of you. So thank you. And I also see that Board Member Figdor has her hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, I share the chair's enthusiasm. Thank you so much, Ben and Sarah and Katie. This is incredible work. In particular, I just wanted to appreciate aligning your behavior management with PBIS. That is huge, and the culturally relevant training you've been doing, but so much systematizing and creating a stronger team. So thank you so much. I really recognize how much work has gone into this and how much change it represents. And just thank you. And I hope also recognizing the 4:30 a.m. start. Let's end this meeting soon and have you be off. So thank you.
Yeah.
Board Member Oberman, go ahead.
Yes, I will be a part of the train of thanking. I know how well you and hard you work. I know how all your bus drivers work. And I appreciate every single one of them. And I do something that when I remember with Sarah, when you became a member of the staff, talking about really incorporating the flow of the transportation and operations really as part of the system for educating students. And I see in this presentation, that's what's happening. So Ben, Kath, Katie, and Sarah, thank you. And everybody else, thank you very much. And thank you, Helene, for all the finance information today.
And the last of our committee members, Board Member Noor, has been very efficient and has put her gratitude in the chat. So much appreciation for that. Okay, so Julie, I think your hand is up from before. Super. So I would be looking now for a motion to adjourn this meeting. We've covered a lot and it's getting late, so I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Board Member Figdor, thank you. And a second. Board Member Oberman and Board Member Noor, wonderful. Show of hands, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your evening.